You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we show business owners and entrepreneurs how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus their life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll help you diversify into real estate by equipping you with the tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. Hey guys, thanks for jumping on to another episode of the Reinvest Podcast, episode number 89. Have a great episode here today to talk about something from a cultural perspective that is creating some trends that you may or may not be aware of. But before we do that, I want to let you guys know that Level 5 Capital, our investment company, is live. Our website, we just dropped that and started it, live like a couple weeks ago.
Well, our company's been alive for a little longer than a couple weeks ago. Our website is now live.
We're official. We've made it into the 21st century. So
they say you don't exist if you don't have a website.
It's true.
And I think that's true. I think when I think something's sketchy, I Google it. And if their website doesn't come up, I'm like, yeah, it's
There's
probably
two
a scam.
things you need to be credible in today's society. That's a good credit score and a website. So if you have those two things, you'll make it and you'll be fine. But no, check the link out in the show notes and go give that a poke. Let us know your feedback on that. But today, let's jump into our episode. We've got with us Josh McCallen. And Josh, you're sitting in a beautiful resort area. I have a feeling that's going to tie into what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, guys.
You have, I want to start with this, just a little personal note because you made mention of this. You have 10 children.
Ooh.
So happy to be the father of 10 children. It is a grind to learn how to do that as far as to nurture them. But my wife was very kind and gave us 10 children.
Yeah. So what's the age gap between the oldest and the youngest, or where are we at?
We are a 24-year-old lady and a 4-year-old little dude.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's awesome.
You're double digits. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's double digits. Yeah, it's double digits, which is funny because Melanie and I got married young. I only had one brother. She had 9 siblings, so she knew what a big family would be like. I was happy. As I say, I'm always happy to oblige making babies. So he was generous and
sounded like a good partnership.
yeah, exactly. So, but I will tell you, she started. Look, it's always hard to have any children. One is the hardest.
Yeah.
It gets challenging for the first 5 years, and then after that, when you have an older one, we call this the theory of the bigs, the middles, and the littles. And as you get more of them, it becomes a really positive internal support system.
Yeah.
But at first, it's hard. So anybody who has one child, you're like, man, one's enough. One's hard. Absolutely hard. 2, a little better than 1, actually. And then it'll actually get incrementally better because they'll have playmates and when it
economies of scale. Yeah.
it gets way better and easier.
Well, that just issued a challenge to Garrett. He just had a 6th, so I'm not going to let him off the hook until he has at least 10 now. So.
No, you might not make it. You're not probably going to make it. Right?
Well, I can vouch for everything you've said up to this point in our career. And, it's funny. My wife and I were having this conversation about the parallels between investing in real estate and investing in a family. And there are very similar. It's the long game. It's not transactional. You're building foundations that are going to grow deep roots, hopefully, and last for a long time. So I think that's awesome. And I'm sure that's shaped how you do business. So tell us a little bit about accountable equity, what you guys are doing, and then we'll get into our main topic.
Yep. So honored to be here with a group of investors, over 426 families, probably 800 individuals, all accredited, using the strategy that the wealthy have always known, the ultra wealthy, and that now middle class investors can find out about, which is called direct large scale real estate investing, not just REITs, not public stuff, private stuff. And this allows so many benefits, from taxes and a higher yield to community. Anyway, so my quick background is, grew up in tough situation, single mother, loved working. And so my path to success was always just work harder than everybody else and enjoy it. I mean, that's the good gift God gave me. I technically just want to work all the time. So that helps you grind from, poverty up into opportunity. And then we set a goal to get into real estate. Now, this seemed odd at the time because Melanie and I were getting married. We were both teachers. I went to Franciscan University, in Steubenville, Ohio, like you guys are in Ohio,
That's right. Buckeye
and
Nation.
loved it. I wanted to
You're a
be a
Buckeye,
teacher.
aren't you?
Ah, I guess I lived there a lot. I lived there for 8 years all in because I got a master's and I worked for these schools. But anyway, our trajectory went through schools into Europe. We lived in Europe for 4 years
Wow.
running a historic place for a school. And then I came back to America. I said, let's get into real estate. And through a really circuitous route, uh, ended up finding a way to grind onto a guy's, just grind. He's like, whatever you can do to help me. I'm building a bunch of luxury homes on the beach. Just chip in. And that
Mhm.
was the door into becoming a land developer and seeing how wealthy deals get done. And
Can you expound on that? Because I think that entry point is probably relatable to a lot of people.
Yep.
Right? You start at the bottom, you're a grunt worker, and the people that you have to see the opportunity in what's presented. Otherwise, you're like, well, why would I do that? So what was the nature of how you chipped in and proved your value?
You know what? You just described what I coined on our podcast. We say there's two major capitals you need to grow. One is human, and the other is you have to find financial capital. But human capital is more important. And human capital means you see life as an opportunity for you, no matter what opportunity, struggle, or challenge. So for me, what I did for him was he had in very precise terms, he thought I had great business ideas and was going to do a real estate strategy with me. But in the meantime, he kept saying, we're struggling to build these houses. So I was not hired to build houses, even though that was my dream since I was a boy. I always say I grew up watching This Old House, and it taught me how that was my passion. But he hired me to do something else in sales, and his company also owned a construction development company, and they were struggling during the boom of '05, '06. They couldn't get enough workers.
Wow.
They were making money hand over fist, but they couldn't get anybody to do any work. So what I went down and just stayed in the building. This is actually very funny. All I did was show up at the half-built houses and stay. I never said it that way, but that's truly the gift I brought. And then from that provided consistency. So when contractors showed up, they didn't just leave.
Yeah.
Right.
They said they put in a full day. I was there to check that they put in a full day. That this guy says, I can't do any more work until that other dude shows up. Well, then I can get on the phone and call the other dude and he can be here by lunch.
Yeah.
And now we saved a week's worth of back and forth crap.
Wow.
So all I did was show up and work it. And then from
Wow.
that, I learned how to build buildings. It was really exciting.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, you just provided accountability, but then you also offered yourself as a problem solver from a logistical perspective. But that gave you the experience to understand what was actually happening, and you kind of leverage that forward.
Which, when you're in that position, it probably didn't seem super significant to you at the time, but you were solving a huge problem that opened up opportunities, gave you an opportunity to learn. So that's awesome.
So there's a couple other caveats here or things that you do. You're a national speaker. And one of the things that you have on your bio that I really appreciated, and I think there's something to this, you said that you get to be the servant leader of, your company. So like, what does that phrase mean to you and why'd you put that there?
Yeah. So, I don't know, it was years ago. There was this years ago when I was teaching high school, I was also teaching theology and philosophy and history. And, I kind of became passionate about the dignity of the person. So that kind of got me down a lot of books that led me to this term servant leadership about 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. And, almost 25 years ago. So that's been in my vernacular. But fast forward to today, when you put it on a website or when you talk about it publicly, it's an indictment, right? It's super dangerous to say things like that.
Right.
Because we do have 400 or 500 employees at any one time. And we're in hospitality operations, hospitality land development, and capital aggregation. We created a private equity company. So we're around a lot of people. We have executives working for us and dishwashers. And, if you're going to put yourself as a servant leader, then what you're doing is you're recognizing that each of the components of the project have dignity and worth. And you have to kind of see productivity through the eyes of their what's in it, what their wants and desires are.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to to see your gift as service to them, not as a master to them. So anyway, it's a lot. There's a lot of thought there, and it leads to a lot of the philosophy of our company.
That could be its own podcast episode, I'm sure. But I like that, and the idea of it's an indictment, because you're going to walk away with one of two things if you're going to profess that. You're going to be a hypocrite, and nobody's going to want to work with you, or you're going to hold yourself accountable to a standard that's going to make your company thrive. So it's going to dictate one or two of the ways.
May I comment on that? So what you're very wise, Garrett. What I also meant though was I will always be considered a hypocrite. And the point is you just have to choose that suffering, right? Life, you're always going to be called a hypocrite because you actually cannot do it.
Right.
You cannot achieve seeing the world through 500 people's eyes correctly, speaking to them in the language their heart needs it, and demanding success and productivity. And it can't work.
Gotcha.
But what I always say to people is when you come in our company, we have 3 virtues. We say here, Viva Me is French for revive the soul. And our properties are meant to be places of where they feel loved. And so we try to teach our staff, even if they don't speak English, everybody, we're trying to teach them how to proactively love someone. And we think that's what hospitality's core mission is, to show kindness and love. And so we're trying to teach these crazy ideas. We're never going to get there. And so I always say we have 3 virtues that guide our business. And you can't be on the team unless you want them. I always say you can be on the team if you're not good at them, but you have to want them. And they're virtues, so you'll never get them. You're going to make incremental steps toward them, and that'll be the win. Joy of service, humility, and ministry. These 3 virtues are why I'm killing myself. And if you join us, I'm sure it's going to hurt a lot. So that's hopefully your purpose in life too, to seek joy of service, humility as a strength, and ministry as your life's purpose. And, not everybody's from the same, backgrounds or age or ethnicity or wealth or faith. So we understand that can be interpreted many ways. And we just say, we want you to strive for something and seek these virtues with us. So my point is, my joke at the end of that speech, which we do to every executive, and after we say it, we say, this may not be the right opportunity for you unless you want these 3. And we say it, and then we just sit back and we let them digest it.
Yeah, they're like,
And then I say, what do you think? And I'm like, and good news is I wouldn't judge you negatively no matter what you say, because if you say you don't want it, I think you're a person of high integrity. If you say you want it, but you're not good at it, I'll think you're a great person that trying to achieve more than your talents have right now. But, and my bottom line though, is I always feel like I'm handing them a baseball bat whenever I say these speeches. It's like, here you go. Here's a baseball bat. Every time I screw up, you get to just beat the bejeebies out of me with that bat. Right. And so I do screw up. Right. And I'm seriously demanding. We have to win, and my last little mantra is I teach the team, great news. We've all watched the basketball game and 10 people sit on the bench or 8 people sit on the bench and never play. You're a starter. You're actually on the court. Yeah, okay. Right. And the good news is you can't actually punch into the clock and work with us on the floor unless you choose to be a starter tonight. And now when you choose to be a starter, guess what happens? You only get 2 choices. We're either going to fail miserably out there or we're going to win.
Yeah.
Not the other choice, which is kind of zombie style, just go through the night.
Yeah.
We can't do that because then that's a loss.
Yeah.
Either win tonight or we lose tonight. And I try to drill that in. So I'm like aggressive, like beyond belief with our staff, but all these virtues. So you can understand that goes positively and negatively.
So we kind of jumped into some of and I do want to revisit this because there's event venue space, there's resorts all over the world that does not guarantee that you're going to be successful in this kind of sector of real estate and business. So that's kind of what we're talking about. One of the things I want to hit though at a much higher level is, what are some of the cultural shifts that have taken place that are shaping the way that hospitality is done.
And maybe too, before we even get into that, could you just give our audience and us, frankly, what kind of resort assets do you own? What kind of event venues do you own, and kind of where are they at in the country?
Yep, we jumped into the deep end on a simple linear path. I left that partner, that gentleman where I built buildings for. I ended up becoming his partner, and one of the buildings he couldn't kind of turn around because he was going to tear it down before the recession was a hotel. And so that hotel sat there in his portfolio for the whole recession. And post-recession, we wrote a business plan about reviving and restoring dumpy hotels on the Eastern Seaboard and making them 4-star. And we thought it was all about building buildings, which we love building and renovating, but it was actually never about the buildings. You can go to a pretty building and the service is negative and you hate the building, you hate everybody there, you hate it all. So we realized after about a year of failing that we had to turn it into a training program of love. So anyway, but what do we own today? Today we grew out of that partnership, had a nice little small exit, and then we built a 3-tiered company. A private capital group called Accountable Equity, where investors from all over the world joined us because they wanted to be part of direct investing in a mission with purpose. And then 2, we built a Viva May management company, which is like our version of a Ritz-Carlton brand. It's a brand that can operate several different types of hospitality. And it has a whole professional core of chefs and directors and marketers and everything. And then we currently own 4 in the last 5 years, and we're about to have 5. So we'll be at 5 resorts in 5 years. They're typically unrepeatably beautiful, but with some problem, whether it be the business has failed or the buildings are failing. But what's core to our heart is natural beauty. So they're gorgeous venue locations. And they're usually, our strategy is drive to leisure, which means about an hour to 2 hours from major wealth centers. And we are able to adapt to the nature of the beauty. So sometimes it's been, I used to do only beach resorts. Now we do vineyard resorts, waterfront resorts on the Chesapeake, golf resorts. And then, of course, we have the most historic winery in America at Renault Winery. We restored from bankruptcy. So wineries are part of it. Farming, we do large scale agrarian style resorts where it's like we have one that's 400 acres of farmland and vineyards and about a mile of waterfront. And so we have boats there for you to go out on. We have walks to take you through, and of course, great food and awesome accommodations.
Your shareholder meetings have got to be a blast.
That's funny you bring that up. They are. We do them in person, and anybody can come. You guys are welcome to come August 24th at the Renault Winery. Yeah, they're awesome. Now, we make it's open. Like there are shareholder meetings quarterly, and they're awesome. You get to use the resort. If you're an investor, you don't pay for the food, beverage, and event. If you're not, you have a small stipend. So yeah, no, they are awesome, and we bring in national speakers. It's totally more than just a shareholder meeting. It's a total mastermind for accredited investors.
So you mentioned that first project was post-recession, building a business plan, right? So circa 2010,
11 and 12. Yep.
Okay. So from that time to now, obviously from an economic perspective, things are different than they were. So that helps. But are there cultural things that have kind of magnified or strengthened this business model?
I would say, other than the fact that we have a fundamental belief that we think most people, the cultural shift that I see is that people struggle with purpose and meaning much more than I remember growing up. We didn't talk about that before. Now a lot of people struggle with purpose and meaning, and the work we do might look menial, but we help them realize that it's a spiritual gift to show kindness and love to somebody. So do you want this to be part of your purpose in life? So that's why, first of all, we would have done that anyway, but we think that's why we have strong culture. Is it seems like an antidote to the sadness of not feeling like your life's matter. But anyway, the other cultural shifts are ironic. This is a positive for me. Weddings are continuing to grow in about double-digit volume and rate, or overall market size. It's about a $70 billion industry in this country.
Wow.
where venues are a major part of it, and we are one of the country's most successful wedding operators. And so,
Wow.
and we do it at a very high premium. Like this is a premium middle class wedding, not a billionaire wedding. But not something I could have afforded. And they're in beautiful venues where you might do it on the water, you might all kinds of beautiful stuff in the vines, in a mansion, or just in beautiful ballrooms that overlook the water. So we have dozens of them, and we're very close to DC, and we're very close to New York and Philadelphia, which are some of the major wealth centers of the world.
That's so fascinating. So from a marriage perspective, because like I'm not trying to stir the pot at all, right? But just observationally, there like the viewpoint and the perception of marriage seems to have shifted more around the wedding and the experience than maybe the long-term relationship.
That's right.
Thereafter.
Yeah, that's a sad thing if you think marriage is a beautiful sacrament and for the good of society, which I do. But it is a sad thing that the wedding is a little bit overemphasized. And here's what we say. We were given the gift of these beautiful properties, and we have the gift to be in their weddings, and we take it pretty seriously. The fact is, we definitely hope and pray that all our families have great marriages too.
Right.
But you're right. No, and you know what this feels a little bit like is we're in that two things that are really interesting. One, we're in a very Instagram necessary society. So the reason our weddings are so many, I mean, we get 5,000 inquiries at one property for weddings a year. So I mean,
my gosh.
It's astronomical. Now we don't, I'm sure hundreds, thousands and thousands of those are tire kickers, but it makes us have a large sales team. It means we're doing a lot of personal visits, and we're listening to the stories of the ladies of what their dreams are. And it's really an awesome business. But my point is this, we hope that we can be a gift to them during that. The other thing that crosses my mind, which is totally speculative and could not be based in truth, but it feels true, is that there's so few ceremonies in this world anymore, right? You got graduation and you got weddings. I mean, you know what I mean? There's not as many religious ceremonies in life. There's not as many civic society things, that not everybody's in a civic organization or whatever. So weddings are like really important to family bonding. And that's actually a major gift that I think is a good thing about weddings.
Yeah,
really
that's true. A reason to come together.
Yeah, they come together, and yes, they're expensive, but that almost creates the intensity for them to come.
That's true.
So, it's like a mastermind that costs $100 a month compared to a mastermind that costs $1,000 a month. You take the $1,000 a month more seriously. A very expensive event, everybody just takes it more seriously. They come in from California to be on the East Coast. They go wherever. So those are the goods. There's mixed with, there's some sadness there that people are overemphasizing the wedding, but maybe there's a lot of good, and we'll let God do his work in that. But we can't control everything.
Well, if somebody's going to be at the intersection of that major life event, who better than to be someone who is approaching it with a level of intentionality, and purposefulness, like your company. So that's awesome. How far, just out of curiosity, on average, are your venues booked up?
Yeah, that's since you're a business people, that's the unbelievable part of my business. Now, our business is about 18 months out. You're buying right now. Wow. So you're buying 2026. The beginning of 26, the end of 25. And what's really great about that is it allows us to budget correctly every year, and really to pull more levers to add profitability. But it's a very compelling business model. And they pay large deposits up front. If people are listening to this in other parts of the country, the Northeast is much more of a turnkey, high cost, high deposits structure, which helps us as business people.
So I think the interesting about, resorts is it's not your typical real estate asset class,
That's
because
right.
there is a very heavy business operational component to that. You mentioned, Viva May Hospitality, the management portion of that. What are the, I'm going to say Chick-fil-A, because everybody thinks of them as kind of the gold standard of
Yep.
like white glove service that makes the world go round. You talked about the 3 principles. What are the things operationally that are necessary to be successful for resorts in the event space?
Yeah. I'm about to say this with a baseball bat. I can hand you a baseball bat after I say it. But we think one of the ways that's really important is to have those clear vision of the virtues in our case, or values, but then to have a repeated, consistent rally
Experience. Yeah.
meeting, and to enculturate the team through those meetings. So that's a very expensive strategy, but we try to do it every week at every property, where we gather as many, if not all, the whole property to
Physically.
break physically
Wow.
to do 4 things. I mean, these are all very intentional, but we go around the room and introduce ourselves, and we answer what we do on the team, what position we're starting for the team, right? And then we have a board on the wall. It says a question. So you have to get up there and you have to answer 3 questions. What's your name? What part of the team are you on? And 3, can we count on you?
Hmm.
You just have to answer it. And so they have to declare in front of 100 people, yes, you can count on me in that position. Now, I think at different times people take it more seriously, but then we go around the room, we do the who's in the room, the why are we in the room, the what do we need to learn to be better at our job and love on people, and what's going on property. So the 4 W's, and we try to do that every week. So, because every week we have so many concerts, events, weddings,
Right.
we try to keep all our staff up to date.
What's been the reception from the mid-level management that are responsible for those 100 people in the
Yeah.
room? What's been the feedback
Mixed.
on those
It's a
meetings?
mixed bag, Melanie and I have listened to all the different business um, gurus of the world, and our basic, the continuous stream is consistency will win over time and compound over time.
Mm.
So no, it doesn't. I don't think I have buy-in from everybody, but there is an esprit de corps. There is a great deal of buy-in and excitement, especially because they realize that the staff they get to lead at our property, it works, right? It's working, that we have a joy, a spirit of decor, esprit de corps, I should say. So for the most part, the culture's happy to serve. And when you have that, it really is uplifting to the managers. So I think it's almost like if they thought I was kidding up front, then they come and work, and it's actually a little better experience for them than it would be in a different venue.
Yeah.
I think it creates a compounding positivity, but we would love to continue to attract more people who want to help us take this load and grow, because we are trying to acquire more.
Well, at the end of the day, it's like, what else would you do in place of that? Because you've set a level of accountability so that you can have a conversation if there's discontinuity with somebody in that, there's not buy-in. Hey, it gives you a conversational point. You set the expectation, and yeah, that's really good.
So what's have you purchased all 4 of the resorts that you currently have, resorts and venues, with the private equity company Accountable
Yes.
Equity? And what's been kind of the investor profile, or what have you seen from your investors on the reception of these opportunities, or what makes it so compelling that they're like, yeah, you know what?
Okay.
I'd rather jump into a resort rather than an apartment complex, which they've been all the rage the last, 5 years, because they're just,
Great answer.
everybody preaches state.
Great question. Yeah, you're asking the right question. So to break it into 2 parts, one, they're accredited investors. We have far higher tax saving strategies than a multifamily, mostly because our component parts of our real estate are highly depreciable. So if a multifamily, we're usually 10% more in depreciation. So for those geeks out there that love to save on taxes legally, we make it more potent. We're more potent than a multifamily. 2, a multifamily, some people call it a business. And it is, it's called a one-line revenue business, but it's really a lease. Now that's good. Bankers actually like that. What we are is a business. Now, what's crazy about that is it depends which side of the coin you're on. You might be like, well, I'd rather not invest in a business with 400 acres and beautiful buildings. So we're way more real estate and more tax savings real estate than the typical multifamily. But then we have this lever, I call it. We have levers. If you picture an old train station with levers or something, and we have a lot of levers. And in an apartment building, you have one lever. You can improve the apartment and make it worth a little more, or you can wait for inflation. Either way, that's your lever. Make rents go up. You have no lever to fight high interest rates, none, because you can't flex your rate with interest rates.
Right.
So in our model, I think a lot of people see that if you believe in us as operators, it's a far safer investment than a constrained one revenue stream business like an apartment. Now, for 4 out of these last 5 years, I was getting my ass kicked by every multifamily guy. They would drop we're going to raise $10 million or $20 million, and they would get it in a weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm over here raising 10 million and it takes me 6 months or whatever. We've raised about 54.5 million in the last few years, but now it's the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Because we've been able to fight back inflation by changing our rates. So we've stayed relatively equilibrium on revenue and profit to rate, if you want to think of it that way. And then we just make more money than those apartment buildings. And so, we're an operating business. And then another nice thing happened in the last 2 years where you and I have seen people on podcasts talk about buying businesses, right?
Yeah. Right.
And that's a really good strategy. And they always say it's similar to Ryan real estate. Well, this is all I've ever done is buy businesses. They just come with,
Real estate.
400 acres and a mile of waterfront and land development rights and buildings they just come with that.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in a sweet spot right now, and that's why we're attracting a lot of investors.
So last question before we jump into our show segments. Just educate me, and this isn't because I know and I'm like setting up a question. It's just ignorance. What is the financing difference towards approaching what you guys do versus a multifamily property?
Yeah, so financing for what I do is damn near impossible because we're not. You picture a multifamily. Multifamily has if there's 100 banks in a town, all 100 have a division of their lending portfolio that is for apartments.
Right.
Of the 100, it used to be about 50 of them would have done hospitality. And then of the 50, probably 10 or 20 of the 100, what I should say, would have done turnaround, value add hospitality. So it's a small pool of lenders, very, very small. And that is a challenge. And I would say if it was pre-COVID, those numbers would have all been double or triple.
Right.
But now they're at bare bones. And so we have to kick the ball so far out of the football field before bankers are excited about us. Whereas a multifamily just has to be a multifamily and not be dumb.
Right.
So,
that's good.
but here's the other point. But that's probably why, but multifamilies probably can't get many deals done right now because this is the last intellectual thing I'll say. And I don't know if I'm going to do this great, but an economist can help me. The cap rates. Everybody talks about low cap rates are great. And they were. If you would have bought an apartment and grew its revenue by 100,000 in profit, you would have made one. You would have done. Would that have been a $2 million valuation bump? Right, it would have done a crazy increased value because of a a 5 cap. Well, we were never trading at 5 caps in hospitality. We were always closer to 9, 8, 9, 10. So you're like, well, then you increase $100,000 and you only go up by $1 million.
Right.
Okay. So that looked negative before, but now you have a systemic problem in a multifamily because if people think buildings are worth 5 caps, which is 5% on your money, and the debt is 6,
Right.
it's illogical to buy them.
Right.
But if you're over here in my world where the people are willing to sell them,
Still
they're actually
pencils.
I can actually buy them far cheaper than 10 cap. I can just buy them because we're buying failing businesses, so I buy them much cheaper. But my point is the interest rates are equilibrium or lower than our normal embedded cap rate. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
no,
To
that's a
me,
good
that's
point.
the
I mean, I
problem.
think what we've talked about is, the compression of cap rates. And there was such a premium from a buyer perspective on
Right.
multifamily
That's right.
that people were buying at the end really on speculation. That never happened with hospitality, especially since COVID.
That's right.
Wrecked some people. So it created some buying opportunity while you could still get pretty manageable
That's right.
financing money.
That's right.
So I think that's a good distinguishment. But
All right, we're going to jump into our smaller pocket segment. All right, go ahead and tell us about one of your worst real estate deals. It could have been before you got in the resort space, or even maybe something unexpected or negative that happened in the resort space. What happened, and then what did you learn from it?
It was when I went to capitalize the first of the Viva May properties called Renault Winery. It has a golf course, and I started talking to fat cat investors, football players, famous people, and they were all very curious about it because it had some notoriety. And then one guy, a famous retired football player, was going to buy the golf course and partner with me. And he took me through like months of, hoping that was going to happen, or being many, many meetings. And at the end, he didn't show up. And so we almost lost everything. Melanie and I had $500,000 in, and we went to the bank. When closing was supposed to have happened, we tell them we're not going to close. And they said, well, you guys just lost $500,000 then. And Melanie and I were very adamant. This is after 6 months of constant pursuing of people to raise money from, that we would close for them. And we made a final pitch, very personal, very, like there's a lot to this, what happened. And then we're driving home, and we're pretty defeated. Our lawyer's in the car, or in his own car, I should say, and we're on the phone. And we get a text message from a senior vice president there, and they go, we decided we're going to sell you the building.
oh my gosh.
We're going to hold the loan. You do have to come up with $1 million, another $1 million, and you have to have it in 3 weeks. But that we didn't lose our money, and we ended up closing. And so what I learned from that is, that's actually the normal way people buy big buildings, is like a few connected people they know, they beg them. And then at the last minute, they say yes, and they buy the building. We made it super, it's ingrained in our cultures that we're gonna let 100 investors have a piece of this, and we're gonna give them great returns, but we're not gonna chase the one fat cat or the two fat cats, because they're very fickle at the last minute.
You can't let somebody control your business like that.
Control the whole thing. They control the whole thing, but because
and they know it, and they've been used to being in those positions. And it makes you really vulnerable, and you're still accountable to a bunch of other people. Like that
That's
investor
right.
didn't realize you have 400 other employees, or
Yep.
Yeah,
That's a good lesson. Wow.
Dude, I gave me chills though when you get that text. I mean, what relief. I mean,
Yeah, it was a big. Yeah, this whole thing has felt divinely inspired. So we've just been working hard, and there's 1,000 other failure points that I don't even like to really talk about, because, like everything, our contractor, when we finally bought the building, we finally got some construction debt. He's working. We're about $1 million into the project, and he freaking has a heart attack and never comes back. And
wow.
so we had no contract. So, I knew how to subcontract, so I just built it the rest of the way. But things like that, there's so many bad body blows that it hurts. I mean, just think about a few of them right now, really hurts. But that's the obstacle is the way, perhaps.
Well, I think people like watching on YouTube be like, man, Josh's got this really cool, fancy, venue behind him, but like all the back end stuff. I mean,
well, and most people wouldn't see that you bet the farm on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you could have lost $500,000 on your first project, which probably the discouragement alone from that maybe would have stopped you from even pursuing it further, because you're right. I'm out. That was it. And we all have, sometimes they're not that extreme, but we all have little jumps like that where you just got to move to the next step. And sometimes we don't have kind of the wherewithal to push through the discouragement, the failure to learn, and we give up. And would you have it 5 years later, you didn't know what you were on the other side of when you made that decision. So it's just kind of an important lesson to push through. It's the consistency that you were talking about earlier. If you're consistent with your employees and your staff, man, can you imagine if you're consistent for 5 years, where they're going to be at in 5 years with their personal development, with your businesses, so I think there's just a lot of wisdom to that in a lot of aspects of life that we are so short-sighted. Yeah. We give up right at the finish line. We don't know we're right there.
People overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. So, all right, we're going to go into what we call our little nugget. So, Josh, this is a part of our show where you give us a practical takeaway or a very tried and true principle that you operate your business by. Probably something we haven't talked about yet. Give us something fresh.
Yeah, something fresh is don't always think about capital as money. If you look it up, it's the energy and power to achieve, to begin. And honestly, I think human capital is far more valuable. So start aggregating and syndicating the people in your life that will help you get to the next level and be a gift to them. But do it all the time. And I think the amount of things you will achieve will shock you.
I've got no comment on that. That was great.
Yeah.
What's been one of the best resources in your business development?
Business development? I'm in a few. GoBundance is a great mastermind. I've been part of it for many years. The other one I'm a part of right now, though, it's taken my breath away, is Halftime. Mm-hmm. It's an organization where you reflect what's your purpose now that you are halfway through your life. And a guy named Lloyd Reeb is my coach there. So that's changed me.
So halfway through your life is 40, 50?
Almost 50. Yeah, almost 49.
Wow. That's wild. That's wild. That kind of perspective is good, though. How can people find out more about you and follow your success?
The best way is accountable equity. That's what we've been talking about here. But I've never told you guys, we have a big podcast. We'll have to get you guys on. It's called Capital Hacking. Yeah, and what we teach is you have to see the money, like the Matrix. You have to see through the code. It's not just cash. It's mostly the people you surround yourself with. So Capital Hacking is a great, famous show. We've had all the big celebrities on it, and it's been around a long time.
Do you lead that?
Awesome.
Yep, that's our show. Yeah.
Okay, very cool, very cool. We'll put those things in the show notes. Josh, refreshing today, to talk about something kind of new, maybe not in people's purview, but then also to kind of realize that business at the end of the day rests on the same foundation for everybody. So thanks for taking the time to do this.
Thank you, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks, man. As always, excited that you joined us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to learn how you can use your hard-earned capital to diversify into real estate, go to our website, lv5capital.com, and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. We'll see you next time.